Good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Emily, I see you there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. All right, guys. So today we are looking at the social ethical theory of utilitarianism. Arguably one of the biggest ethical theories, especially in the coming weeks as we wrap up the course and we study things like medical ethics. Utilitarianism is certainly a way of thinking that has sort of permeated modern thinking on lots of issues. So let's start with the crash course, and then we will look into it deeper. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen.
Should Batman kill the Joker? If you were to ask the Dark Knight himself with his hard and fast no-killing rule, he'd say absolutely not. Actually, in fact, he would say,
absolutely not.
when you think about it, dude is pretty Kantian in his ethics. Regardless of what Joker does, there are some lines that good people do not cross. And for Batman, killing definitely falls on the wrong side of that line. But let's be real here. Joker is never gonna stop killing. Sure, Batman will have him thrown back in Arkham, but we all know that he's gonna get out. He always gets out, and once he's free, he will kill again, and maim, and terrorize. And when he does, won't a little bit of that be Batman's fault? Batman has been in a position to kill the Joker hundreds of times. He has had the power to save anyone from ever being a victim of the Joker again. If you have the ability to stop a killer and you don't, are you morally pure because you didn't kill? Or are you morally dirty because you refused to do what needs to be done? So, why do I describe Batman as Kantian? Well, the school of thought laid out by 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant, now known as Kantianism, is pretty straightforward. More precisely, it's absolute. Kantianism is all about sticking to the moral rule book. There are never any exceptions or any excuses for violating moral rules. And our man Batman tries his hardest to stick to his code, no matter what. But there are other ways of looking at ethics, like instead of focusing on the intent behind our behavior, what if we paid more attention to the consequences? One moral theory that does this is utilitarianism. It focuses on the results or consequences of our actions and treats intentions as irrelevant. Good consequences equal good actions in this view. So what's a good consequence? Modern utilitarianism was founded in the 18th century by British philosophers Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, but the theory has philosophical ancestors in ancient Greek thinkers such as Epicurus. All of these guys agreed that actions should be measured in terms of the happiness or pleasure that they produce. After all, they argued, happiness is our final end. It's what we do everything else for. Think about it like this. Many things that you do for the sake of something else. You study to get a good grade, you work to get money. But why do you want good grades or money? There are different answers we could give, like maybe we're seeking affirmation for our intelligence or the approval of our parents or a degree that will give us a career that we want. But why do we want that particular career? Why do we want approval? We can keep asking these questions, but ultimately our answer will bottom out in, I want what I want because I think it will make me happy. That's what we all want. It's one of the few things everyone has in common. And utilitarians believe that's what should drive our morality. Like Kant, utilitarians agree that a moral theory should apply equally to everyone, but they thought the way to do that was to ground it in something that's really intuitive. And there's really nothing more basic than the primal desire to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So it's often said that utilitarianism is a hedonistic moral theory. This means the good is equal to the pleasant, and we ought morally to pursue pleasure and happiness and work to avoid pain. But utilitarianism Utilitarianism is not what you'd call an egoistic theory. Egoism says that everyone ought morally to pursue their own good. In contrast to that, utilitarianism is other-regarding. It says that we should pursue pleasure or happiness not just for ourselves, but for as many sentient beings as possible. To put it formally, we should act always so as to produce the greatest good for the greatest number. This is known as the principle of utility. Okay, so no one's gonna argue with a philosophy that tells them to seek pleasure. But sometimes doing what provides the most pleasure to the most people can mean that you have to take one for the team. It can mean sacrificing your pleasure in order to produce more good overall. Like when it's your birthday and your family says you can choose any restaurant you want. The thing that would make you happiest is Thai food, but you know that that would make the rest of your family miserable. So when you choose Chinese, which is nobody's favorite but everybody can make do, then you've thought like a utilitarian. You've chosen the action that would produce the most overall happiness for the group, even though it produced less happiness for you than other alternatives would have. The problem is, for the most part, we're all our own biggest fans. We each come preloaded with a bias in favor of our own interests. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Caring about yourself is a good way to promote survival. But where morality is concerned, utilitarians argue, as special as you are no more special than anybody else. So your interests count, but no more than anyone else's. Now, you might say you agree with that. I mean, we all like to think of ourselves as being generous and selfless. But even though I'm sure you are a totally nice person, you have to admit that things seem way more important, weightier, higher stakes, when they apply to you rather than to some stranger. So utilitarians suggest that we make our moral decisions from the position of a benevolent, disinterested spectator. Rather than thinking about what I should do, they suggest that I consider what I would think if I were advising a group of strangers about what they should do. That way, I have a disposition of goodwill, but I'm not emotionally invested, and I'm a spectator rather than a participant. This approach is far more likely to yield a fair and unbiased judgment about what's really best for the group. Now, to see utilitarianism put to the test, let's pop over to the thought bubble for some flash philosophy.
It's Google Gemini with the assist.
Let me get a punch. Let me just feel a punch. Let me get a punch. When I hope don't sleep.
20th century British philosopher Bernard Williams offered this thought experiment. Jim is on a botanical expedition in South America when he happens upon a group of 20 indigenous people and a group of soldiers. The whole group of indigenous people is about to be executed for protesting their oppressive regime. For some reason, the leader of the soldiers offers Jim the chance to shoot one of the prisoners since he's a guest in their land. He says that if Jim shoots one of the prisoners, he'll let the other 19 go. But if Jim refuses, then the soldiers will shoot all 20 protesters. What should Jim do? More importantly, what would you do? Williams actually presents this case as a critique of utilitarianism. The theory clearly demands that Jim shoot one man so that 19 will be saved, but Williams argues no moral theory ought to demand the taking of an innocent life. Thinking like a Kantian, Williams argues that it's not Jim's fault that the head soldier is a total dirtbag, and Jim shouldn't have to get literal blood on his hands to try and rectify the situation. So although it sounds pretty simple, utilitarianism is a really demanding moral theory. It says we live in a world where sometimes people do terrible things, and if we're the ones who happen to be there and we can do something to make things better, we must, even if that means getting our hands dirty. And if I sit by and watch something bad happen when I could have prevented it, my hands are dirty anyway. So Jim shouldn't think about it as killing one man. That man was dead already because they were all about to be killed. Instead, Jim should think of his decision as doing what it takes to save 19. And Batman needs to kill the Joker already. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Now, if you decide you want to follow utilitarian moral theory, you have options. Specifically, two of them. When Bentham and Mill first proposed their moral theory, it was in a form now known as act utilitarianism, sometimes called classical utilitarianism. And it says that in any given situation, you should choose the action that produces the greatest good for the greatest number, period. But sometimes the act that will produce the greatest good for the greatest number can seem just wrong. For instance, suppose a surgeon has 5 patients all waiting for transplants. One needs a heart, another a lung, 2 are waiting for kidneys, and the last needs a liver. The doctor is pretty sure that these patients will all die before their names come up on the transplant list, and he just so happens to have a neighbor who has no family, total recluse, not even a very nice guy. The doctor knows that no one would miss the guy if he were to disappear, and by some miracle, the neighbor is a match for all 5 of the transplant patients. So it seems like, even though this would be a bad day for the neighbor, an act utilitarian should kill the neighbor and give his organs to the 5 patients. It's the greatest good for the greatest number. Yes, 1 innocent person dies, but 5 innocent people are saved. This might seem harsh, but remember that pain is pain regardless of who's experiencing it. So the death of the neighbor would be no worse than the death of any of those patients dying on the transplant list. In fact, it's 5 times less bad than all 5 of their deaths. So thought experiments like this one led some utilitarians to come up with another framework for their theory. This one is called rule utilitarianism. This version of the theory says that we ought to live by rules that, in general, are likely to lead to the greatest good for the greatest number. So yes, there are going to be situations where killing an innocent person will lead to the greatest good for the greatest number. But rule utilitarians want us to think long-term and on a larger scale. And overall, a whole society where innocent people are taken off the streets to be harvested for their organs is gonna have a lot less utility than one where you don't have to live in constant fear of that happening to you. So rule utilitarianism allows us to refrain from acts that might maximize utility in the short run, and instead follow rules that will maximize utility for the majority of the time. As an owner of human organs, this approach might make sense to you. But I still gotta say, if Batman were a utilitarian of either kind, it wouldn't look very good for the Joker. Today we learned.
So that was a lot. That's a lot to unpack, but the video gave you the basic gist of it all. Utilitarian thought is all about what is the greatest good or the greatest number. And unlike Kant that we studied last week, Kant pretty much says everything is always morally absolute. Even if you're the one person sort of drawing the line in the sand when the entire rest of the world is going against you, and you draw the line in the sand, right? Because in the end, you owe a moral imperative to everyone. And if you don't draw the line in the sand, then who's going to? Compare that to the utilitarians who kind of argue you should always focus on what will benefit more people. Like more, as he talked about, this is an offshoot of what we discussed earlier in the class, which was Epicureanism. And Epicurean, if you remember from the Epicurean versus Stoic debate, the Epicurean said we should prioritize pleasure over pain. Pleasure as long as it's in moderation, and Epicurus said. This is definitely an offshoot of that, except this time, instead of thinking about the pleasure of just yourself, you have to think about what will cause the greatest pleasure for the greatest number of people. And again, like he said, sometimes you might have to sacrifice your own pleasure, your own good well-being, your own good to benefit the larger group. His point in the video about going to go eat for your birthday and you picking the restaurant that you don't necessarily want to go to, that's something I can relate to. My mother is probably like the most picky person in the world. Like, she will only eat at 2 restaurants. In Beckley, she would only eat at Rio Grande, and now Rio Grande's closed. So now Wasabi Fusion is the only other place that she ever wants to eat at. Okay. So last birthday, where did I eat, even though I didn't want to? Wasabi Fusion, right? Because I knew she would make a scene and everything else, and refuse to eat her food and all this stuff if we didn't go get Wasabi Fusion. Okay, so I put aside my own preference to seek the harmony of the greater good. And so that's kind of what utilitarianism is all about. I can certainly mention several popular culture examples that kind of point to this philosophy. I'm sure that most of you have probably seen The Dark Knight at some point, right? The Dark Knight. Of course, he talked about Batman should kill the Joker in the video. But The Dark Knight is all about, like, it's instead of The Dark Knight, it should be called The Dark Utilitarian Knight, okay? Because that's kind of what the whole movie is, a study of utilitarianism. Who should we prioritize at all times? So take, for instance, there's the whole thing with Batman, right, being a Kantian. But if you watch The Dark Knight, pretty close to the end, there's this whole dilemma in it. Should Batman use like satellites and hacking and all this stuff to try to find out where the Joker is in a short period of time? Like the Joker is getting ready to bomb something at the end of the movie. Batman doesn't know where he is. So Batman, what's he going to do? We learned that he has the technology where he can invade people's rights to privacy, pretty much. And so question is, what is the greater good there? Is the greater good people's privacy, or is the greater good saving those people in that moment? So there's that whole Morgan Freeman's character in it, right? He refuses to go along with Batman, right? Morgan Freeman kind of takes a Kantian stand, right? This is always wrong, invade people's privacy. Batman's like, no, the greater good is saving these people's lives. At the end of the movie, the same thing happens. Like we find out that Harvey Dent, right, was the White Knight savior of the city. But then when he turns into Two-Face, he does all these horrible crimes. The city needs some message of hope to keep going. So Batman takes the hit, right? Batman becomes the villain at the end of the movie, even though he didn't do anything wrong. He gets blamed for killing Harvey, right? Even though he didn't. Batman's willing to take one for the team so that Gotham can go on with a message of hope. So I use that as an example just because I'm sure most of you have probably seen it at some point, but the whole movie is just one big exercise in utilitarian thought. We can certainly apply this theory to medical ethics, which we're going to talk about in a second. But first, I want to show you guys this. There's two major utilitarian thinkers. I'm going to tell you the names in the chat. The first one was named Jeremy Bentham. And Jeremy Bentham is most known for he calls it the moral calculus. Moral calculus. So one thing about utilitarianism, throughout the entire course, we have been talking about things in terms of like absolutes, right? So like the natural law, for instance, is an absolute concept. Kantian moral theory is an absolute concept. An absolute concept is one that doesn't invite room for interpretation. Okay? Utilitarians kind of look at things not in an absolute way, but in a quantitative way. Like mathematicians kind of oftentimes will gravitate towards utilitarianism because whether or not you should do something, how do you quantify a good life? Like what type of action should you take in any moment? You can quantify this with numbers, okay? Let me show you Bentham's calculus. Here we go. So these are, according to Bentham, whenever we quantify whether or not we should go down a course of action, this is the, and top is the most pressing of priorities, and as we kind of go down through the list, it becomes sort of a lower order priority. So the first and most important thing that we should think of when doing some type of moral action is its duration. So how long does it last? How long does it last? How intense is it? How intense is it? How near and remote is it? Like, is this something that's going to affect us right now? Is this something that's going to affect us way down the road? How widely does the action cover? How probable is it? Like, is this something that could likely happen? How free from pain is it? And then the last and least important thing, does it lead to further pleasure? This is basically saying, in Bentham's sort of calculator, like we could put like a number on it. Like we could put how many numbers we got? 4, 5, 6. Like we can put duration 7, intensity 6, propinquity 5, so forth and so on. And like if you're deciding on like we could probably like even make a rubric if we wanted to. Like if you were trying to decide should I or should I not take this course of action, you can like measure that out in a rubric, and whatever the number, like however you would weigh it according to this rubric, whatever number you reach is probably the course of action that you should take. So yeah, it would be I haven't ever tested this, but it would be interesting to see, put this in like a rubric form and see if you would come to good results by doing it. But a lot of philosophers take objection to these criteria even being the criteria in question. Like, does it matter how long something will take effect? Does it matter how intense it is? Think about something like somebody getting high, right? Like that's the kind of things that they concern themselves with. Right? How long will this high last? How intense is the high? So you can look at even such stuff like that along those lines as well. Bentham kind of thought that everything could be kind of qualified in this like calculator, like this mathematical type of way. John Stuart Mill, on the other hand, famously, John Stuart Mill, he lived from 1806 to 1873. Famously, John Stuart Mill had this like horrible upbringing. His parents were like super strict. So like by the time this guy was like in the 5th grade or something, like he already knew like 2 or 3 languages. He had read all these books, all this stuff. Mill is a famous educational theorist. I don't know if there's any education majors in here, but he's a famous education theorist. He lived this like horrible childhood, and he had this like mental breakdown as a result of it. But he developed this. He sort of quantified, not quantified. He qualified Mill's thinking. Okay, so let's see. Like the video just talked about, the second utilitarianism that it mentioned, rather than kind of looking at each moral action individually on a rubric, Mill's kind of influence was, let's look at general rules. Like Mill certainly wouldn't say that the biggest and most important thing is how long it lasts, how many people will it affect. Like the video talked about, you could go down a rabbit hole if you go that way. Instead, he mostly qualified things according to general rules and principles. So he still takes this idea of the greater good, the greater number of people, but rather than making it just something you can measure on a rubric, he looked at things according to higher order and lower order concerns. So when I say that, he mostly quantified things according to, okay, maybe we should look at things like the human being first before animals, for instance. Like, how is this going to mostly affect human beings? So you have to prioritize what is important. So both of them kind of come to the same idea, but in slightly different ways. Let's use some of the examples that the video talked about. So let's say, for the sake of example, you guys are that priest in the video. The Nazis used to do this kind of stuff all the time. Okay, like this priest, seeing that they're getting ready to execute 20 people, and the guard tells them, hey, you take the gun and you shoot one person, and I'll let the other 19 of them live. So the sort of situation that you find yourself in is, do you prioritize the greater number of people? Because you might do something, take a life yourself, but it's the greater good to save 19 lives. Or if you kind of take a stand, you preserve your own principles, but then 20 people will die. If you guys were, I thought, nobody knows how they would react in a situation like that until they would be put in it. Okay. But if somebody puts you in a dilemma like that, where do you think you would go? Just your gut feeling. I see you over there, Mandy. You want to kick us off? I know you have an opinion on this. Did I lose her?
Well, if not, I would just say
Go
that
ahead. You go first then, Laura. Yep.
I would just say that I would shoot. I would take the risk. I think, at least as of right now, that I would take the risk and shoot one person and save 19 than rather just 20 dying.
Right. Why do you say that, Lauren?
Because even though it made me a murderer, I feel like it'd be more selfish if I was like saying that I had too good of morals to kill somebody, and then 20 people end up dying instead of just one.
Okay.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't take even the one. I would have to, if you kill 20 people, then the 20 deaths are on you. You shot 20 people. I'm not going to be responsible for killing one just because you threatened to kill 19 or 20 people. It's kind of like, shoot this teacher or I'm going to bomb the whole school. No, if you bomb the whole school, that's on you. But as soon as I chose to kill that one, then now that's on me and I'm negative.
I see you nodding, Allison. You agree with Mandy?
I do. I wouldn't be able to, morally, I wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, obviously, I've never been in that kind of situation, so, in the moment, maybe I'd change my mind, but I don't think I would. Because, also, you don't know, okay, say they do say, okay, if you shoot this one, the other 19 can live. How do you know if they're telling the truth? Also, like, that's something to think about. But I don't think I'd be able to do it.
So you're getting some pushback here, Lauren. But how would you respond to what those two just said? You still think it's worth the risk?
Sorry, I didn't hear. Was you talking to me?
Yeah, the other two just kind of pushed back against what you said.
I still think it's like, yeah, it's going to be my fault, sure, but that's still better than 20 people dying. I'd rather just one die than 20 people. It's kind of like the train question. Would you run it over, like, would you move it to run over a baby rather than, like, civilization or something? That's just what I think, personally. I mean, maybe I'll be different in the situation, but as of right now, that's what I think.
Yeah, because somebody's going to die either way, right? So should it just be one person or should it be all 20? You can see where you would be. I can see where you would be tempted to say the 19, even if I had to do something, take one to do that. What about some of the rest of y'all? How would you respond to such a situation? You know, all things lead to Jordan. Okay, so Jordan, you're always trying to figure out where you stand on all of this. Well, how would you go?
Oh boy. I feel like I say "oh boy" a lot in this class. As always, I'm trying to think it through, because honestly, I don't really like you said. I don't know what I would do, until I'm in that position. Hopefully, I will never be in that position. That sounds horrific. But I mean, I'm kind of. Part of me agrees with Lauren, because, and the reason that I'm kind of agreeing with her, for one thing, if somebody is like holding us all hostage with like a gun and is demanding that like I kill somebody to spare all the others, at that point, is it even like, at that point, is me killing that one person the same thing as me like just doing that in general? Like, or is like, am I fully responsible for that, or is the shooter who's going to kill all those people anyway, is that person responsible for all of it? I don't really know if it's 100% fair to be entirely absolute in all situations. But I go back and forth on it, because I feel like if I did it, like if I killed the one person, then I would like live with regret, and I would have all these scenarios playing in my head. Like, what if I chose, the wrong person, or, that person's family, or this and that. But then if I did the other thing, I would be thinking about all those 20 people that I could have, or those 19 people I could have saved that I didn't.
Yeah, to kind of bounce off of you there, Kant, but to go back to Kant from last week, Kant would definitely say it's your fault if you if you pulled the trigger, right? Because you can't control what other people do, but you can control what you do. So yeah, who's this? Kant would say in this situation, who's to say that that the people who are getting ready to kill the people aren't putting you to the test, right? So yeah, that would be what Kant would say. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to try to ruin this priest's conscience by making him a murderer. Then they wouldn't do that. Then they would just walk off and not kill the other people, right? So that's.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Like, just not kill the other people and just make you do it.
Yeah.
Because you would have to take the killer's perspective at like face value. But what if they're lying?
Yeah, they're doing something to prove a point. Like let's say the people with the guns are doing something to prove a point that ha ha ha, we're gonna make this priest murderer. Kant would say you don't pull the trigger because even a situation like that could occur, and then it wouldn't be the priest's fault.
But at the same time, like, even if I feel like in a situation like that, let's say you do kill somebody and they kill the rest of them anyway, you still was trying to do your best of doing a better good, you know? It kind of reminds me of this one game. I don't know if y'all know it, but it's called Life is Strange. It was popular back then, yes. And at the end of it, spoilers, you either save your best friend or, you know, lover, or you save the town. And of course you save the town. I'm just saying, like, it's just what you do. It's a better thing to do than one person. And at least you're trying your best. It's not like you really want to murder that one person. It wasn't your intention. It's just a situation you got put in.
And when I played that game, I actually saved Chloe. Lauren.
I'm not saving Chloe. I'm sorry. I played it when I was about 12 years old, and I still didn't save her. I fear.
Right? So at least you could sleep easy and that you tried to do the right thing for the greatest number, even if they would pull one over on you. Yeah, it's these things aren't easy to answer. And again, who's to say how any of us would act if we were put into such a situation? I think it would likewise be difficult if you took a moral high ground, but then you watched all 20 people get gunned down. I mean, to support what Lauren said, I think that would likewise be a hard thing to live with. There's no winning for the person, for the priest in either scenario, really. This is going even back to our Aristotle discussion about voluntary versus involuntary actions. I mean, Aristotle would kind of let the priest off the hook here because his action would be involuntary. I mean, he wasn't put into this position by his own free will. So if you did decide to pull the trigger, you can't hold the priest morally responsible for it because it's an involuntary action. To go back to that discussion from earlier in the semester. So you can see all this stuff we've been learning, it's all starting to clash and butt heads with each other here. These are very much different moral theories. Most of you guys in here are going to be going into something medical. So I actually come up with some examples here. This is almost my segue class into talking about medical ethics. We're going to start talking about that next week. But let's use this. So let's say that you're sitting on hospital's ethics board. Okay, people will get paid good money to do that. Okay, so yeah, actually, after I'm finished with my philosophy degree this semester, I will actually be qualified to do something like that. So I need to get on that. Okay, get the money coming. But let's say that you're stuck in this dilemma. Okay, let's say you're a doctor, a nurse, or something, and you're on the hospital's ethics board. So a hospital has one ventilator left. 2 patients need it. One patient is 25 years old, otherwise healthy, high chance of full recovery. The second patient is 82 years old, terminal condition, low chance of survival. Who would you opt to give the ventilator to in that situation? You can use your poll feature at the bottom. Yeah, click that smiley face at the bottom, and you can see like all the emojis that come up. So if you would save the 25-year-old man in that situation, you had to make a decision. And you would save the 25-year-old man. Click the thumb up button. Okay. Pretty much everybody's clicking the thumb up button. Even now, Jordan, Allison, everybody's clicking it. Lauren. What about the 82-year-old man? Would anybody in such a situation vote to save the 82-year-old man? We didn't put any other qualifiers on it, like he's rich or anything like that. Okay. So nobody would save the 82-year-old man. Well, darn, guys, you're all discriminatory against old people. So congratulations. Okay.
I think I would.
Why so, Emma?
It's going to depend on the situation. So whether they have like a DNR or if they don't, I'm going to probably look at that and be like, okay, this person has a DNR, they don't want to, or they want to be, I forget what they call it exactly, but
resuscitated. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I would look at like, what's the situation? Do they want to or don't they? So it would depend on that more so than anything.
Yeah. So if you said the 25-year-old didn't want to be resuscitated and the 82-year-old would, you would then do it for the 82.
Yeah. Like I said, it would depend on if they have like a do not resuscitate or a resuscitate thing on their chart. So that's what I would go by.
That's a smart answer to that situation, I think.
What if they both want resuscitated though?
Okay, so do we know why they're in the position that they're in? Do we know what happened to the older woman? What happened to the 25-year-old? Why are they there?
Yeah, we don't. Just for the sake of example, I didn't come up with a narrative explaining their circumstances. Right? They're just two people. They happen to both be there. They're both going to die unless they use that ventilator.
If I was on the board, I would have to go with, okay, so let's say I've got a 70-year-old woman. Well, there's no guarantee that she couldn't live another 20 years. And it's of no fault of her own that she's there. Well, let's say the 25-year-old, maybe they were drunk driving and that's why they're there. So we put them on the ventilator and we save their life and they get out of the hospital and they do it again 3 weeks later. And I could have given that grandmother, who was no fault of her own, another 20 years. And you just enabled him to put himself right back in the same shoes. So I think if there was no fault of their own on either side, I would have to go with the 25 because he still has so much life to live. But if he's gambling with his life, if he's playing Russian roulette with his life, I'd give grandma the ventilator.
Yeah, I wonder how much you can even take such a thing like that into consideration, though. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like, how would you even legally be allowed to take something like that into consideration? I actually don't know the answer to that. But I see your point, Mandy, that it would be worth considering for sure. Like maybe one person, maybe the young person got there by drunk driving or an overdose or something, right? The 82-year-old person maybe just has cancer or something, right? You can see that would add some nuance to it. I will look that up. I'm going to look that up and research that. How much can you take that into consideration? I actually don't know. Okay, so for the most part, it sounds like you guys are kind of utilitarian so far. So based on that example, let's. I don't want to get into euthanasia yet. I want to save that for an entire class session. Okay. Let's use the vaccine debate from 2020 as an example here. Okay. So you guys don't remember? It was 6 years ago at this point. Damn, right? It feels like it was yesterday. But there's this deadly pandemic going around. We don't know the full effects that it has on the human body. The government seems to have rushed this vaccine out. Just to kind of sum up what it was like a few years ago, the government rushed to push this vaccine out. It hasn't fully been tested and studied yet. So now each individual person has to choose what to do. So do you go ahead and take the vaccine, even though you don't fully know the effects of it, hoping that it will lead to herd immunity for everyone and reduce the effect of the pathogen? Do you do that? Or do you opt not to do that? And this kind of goes to an individual liberty thing, right? The government's not going to tell me what to do. It hasn't been fully tested yet. I'm going to opt not to do that. If I do get sick, if I do spread it, so be it, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to preserve kind of my own individual freedom of choice here. That was kind of the debate. And if you recall, like more conservative politicians were sort of pushing the let's wait and see. Like the government can't tell us what to do. The more liberal politicians push the take the shot. You're being selfish if you don't take the shot approach. Anybody want to share like maybe like what you were thinking, or maybe like what other people in your family were thinking just a few short years ago during the COVID pandemic?
I was like 14 when the vaccine and stuff was coming out, and my family did get it, but not. We were going on a cruise and they wouldn't let us on the boat if we didn't have the vaccine. But I think looking back now, I think that I wouldn't get it. Like I was a kid, I was doing what my mom and dad told me to do. But I think looking back now, I don't think I would have.
What makes you say that?
Well, because the idea of it not being fully tested and stuff, that I don't like the idea of that. But I mean, I turned out fine.
You didn't grow another arm or anything, right? Hannah, you haven't talked yet. What did you all do in that situation?
I got it. And then I got COVID twice after that. So I don't know. I mean, of course there's like different strains of diseases that it's like the flu, you know, you're protected from that strain. I would still get it. I mean, I work at a hospital now, so I have to have it now, but I have it to protect susceptible patients, you know, and a lot of the patients we get are older. I would still get it. I mean, my family was very anti-vaccine. I never really have been, because if you can protect people from something that could kill them if they are susceptible to that strain, then get the vaccine. But
Right.
that's just me. My dad would completely disagree with me. But
What would he say, do you think? Not to put words in his mouth.
probably the government can't tell him what to do, and we can somehow prove that he would argue that the vaccine is useless.
Hannah, I see you turn the camera on. What was your stance?
At first I didn't want to get it, and then I start seeing, like, of course, people starting to get it, and then they were getting sick. So I didn't get it until, like, really, like, last minute, but I did end up getting COVID twice after I received the vaccine. It was probably like a year of me getting the vaccine. I end up with COVID. But my mom, she's a little bit older, so of course she was like, "Well, I'm gonna get it because I don't want to have COVID." And then she did end up with COVID one time after she got the vaccine. But I don't know. I feel like it's just one of those things, like, let me just go ahead and get it. That way, my symptoms is not as bad if I didn't get it, maybe. So I feel like I wouldn't go back and change my mind about not getting it.
Yeah, well said. Like, even though you did get it,
Mm-hmm.
it lowered the symptoms, perhaps.
Yeah. And I mean, when I did have COVID, it wasn't as bad. The first time it was really bad. Like, I couldn't taste, smell, or anything. But the second time was not as bad as the first time. So I feel like the vaccine kind of, I mean, even though we don't know if it's, a good thing to have in our bodies, I mean, I didn't have any problems with it after the fact. So I don't think I would change my mind on it. But some vaccines, I'm like, I don't think I need that.
Yeah, sometimes it seems like they're overkill with it.
Yeah,
Like, I usually don't get the annual flu shot. I'm like,
same.
I might as well just get the flu. If I'm going to get the flu, so be it.
Right. But then if you get the flu shot, most people end up with the flu. So it's just like, dang, I don't know what to do now.
No, my flu shot is something I will never not get. And there's been 2 years in my life that I didn't get a flu shot, and both times I got the flu and thought I was gonna die.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, a lot of this, I think I'm being very kind to the anti-vaxxer debate here. I'm trying to see. I'm even trying to frame things because I got it. I'm trying to frame things from that point of view, but a lot of that comes from this sort of skepticism that all vaccines are inherently bad for the body. Like, there's this whole discussion about vaccines, especially for children, causing a rise in autism and things like that. That the science on that has pretty much been debunked, but there's not a correlation there. But that side will often argues that the scientists are biased even in coming to that determination. It does make you wonder sometimes, like, to see one thing is happening, the other thing is happening. Are they correlated? But I think part of the skepticism about the whole thing was involved that I don't want to put more aluminum in my body, or whatever else might be inside the vaccine. let's frame this in a slightly different way. Okay, this is where we start getting into the petty stuff. Okay, what about the whole mask debate thing that was going on? Yeah, people would go into Kroger or whatever, refuse to wear their mask, make a big scene, public shows of it. Of course, the question is, did the mask even help with anything, or was this just social etiquette? That's a question. I think I've kind of veered more towards um, the like I always wore one, but I didn't have a problem with people who didn't, just because I could yes I could kind of see their point of view on it. But if we're going to look at that from something like a utilitarian perspective, the greater good for the greater number of people, the utilitarians would say definitely get it, because the pain that you would have by spreading the disease or the pathogen is a lot less than the pain that you cause yourself by temporarily inconveniencing yourself by not being able to breathe as well as you could in that very limited time frame. But that one was even more kind of hot issue than even the vaccine, I think. Um, don't tread on me, right? Like you, that was kind of the anti-mask debate. Did any of you guys have a stance on that one?
I thought. Oh, sorry. You
Go
go.
ahead.
Okay, I'm good. I thought at the time that it made sense why people was nervous about the immunizations. I get that, because it really wasn't research like that. That's valid. I didn't really get mine until I had to. I can't remember why I had to though, but I think to wear a mask, if you had a problem with wearing a mask, I thought that was so selfish. I really didn't think it was that serious. At least keep your mouth covered. If you have your nose out, I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of protecting yourself. But like at the same time, you're not spreading it as much as you would with your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. And sometimes it was hard to breathe sometimes. So I get having your nose out. But not wearing one at all during the COVID time, I thought that was so selfish and just stupid. I really didn't think it was that serious, especially because you only had to wear them when you was out and about in public spaces.
I agree with that too. I thought the mind frame, like the sheer rebellion against the mask, was selfish. I wasn't afraid of COVID, like deathly afraid of COVID, but there are especially elderly people who were terrified to leave their house to get their mail. And if it makes grandma feel better, just put the mask on.
What was you going to
Yeah,
say?
and I have my mom still wears hers till this day. She will be anywhere and she'll still wear her mask. But I mean, I understand it too because she had COVID, pretty bad, and I mean, I guess she's afraid of getting it again or anything nowadays. But I don't think back then it shouldn't have been a big problem like some people were making it. Like, I don't know, like if you go to the doctor and you have COVID symptoms and you're sitting here not wanting to wear a mask, it's like, well, you probably have COVID and you're just sitting here not wanting to wear a mask is crazy. So I definitely feel like that was just dramatic on people's end back then.
Brianna, you were going to say something before Lauren, I think.
It was pretty much just the same thing. I feel like I still don't understand why people made a big deal about having to wear masks. Because, I mean, I don't think anybody enjoyed having to wear the mask, but I feel like people done it anyways. And I was also going to say, like, debating if the mask helped or not. I feel like it depends because honestly, when COVID was around, I would see people, they would have the mask on, but it'd be under their chin, it'd be on their chin, like they weren't even wearing it properly. So I feel like I don't understand what the deal on where it is. I mean, I understand it was hard to breathe in. If you need to like pull it down, take a breath, I understand that, but I feel like at such a time people are just walking around just blowing their germs everywhere. But
Yeah, and did you guys probably know more about this than me, or you guys all have a lot of science background? Did they ever determine if it actually did help with anything, or was it just to make you feel better, as Mandy said? Um, did you guys ever see any studies on that? Did it actually prevent the pathogen from spreading?
I had to do a thing on this in class. I did it for health communications, and I actually presented it. And supposedly, it did make a difference, but it was only for like, I guess you could say middle age. I remember it said like 20 to 45 or something like that. It made like a significant difference, but for everybody else, it only made like a really low difference. I can't remember the percentages though, because it was about like 2 years ago. But I remember it did make somewhat of a difference.
Yeah, like Brianna said, like people who would wear them but wear them half-heartedly, like what good does that do, right? Everybody kind of has to wear it to the full extent.
I also feel like wearing the mask, I mean, I guess it would help protect, like, if people was coughing on stuff. But even if you're wearing a mask and you're sick, if you don't wash your hands all the time and stuff like that, you're still going around touching door handles, like you're touching a bunch of stuff, which can still like spread germs. So I feel like the mask probably helped, like, to a point, but like nothing past that.
Yeah, that's not going to help if you cough on your hand first. Right? Go ahead, Tana.
Can't forget about the people that was wearing gloves. Gloves and mask, which I mean, I feel like that's smart. That's a smart thing to do. If you're wearing gloves and you're not really touching anything. But then again, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it was working probably, but I feel like then again, it was probably pointless to wear gloves and I don't know, and still touch everything.
I don't think I ever saw anybody wearing gloves.
Oh my gosh, when it was bad. I've seen so many people wearing gloves and masks when it first was like really bad. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
Yeah, my biggest memory of the time was I had a class at the time. We all met in person. It was a 102 class, I think, and like they wanted me to meet everybody in the class, but everybody in the class at 6 feet apart from me. Everybody in the class wear masks. I remember eventually I was like, "The hell with this. We're just going to meet on Zoom." Like, because like part of teaching is reading people's facial expressions and stuff like that. I mean, that's one reason I asked you guys to turn your cameras on. Yeah, that was my biggest memory of it, was how ridiculous it felt to try to teach 20 people in a room. They all had masks on. Uh, what a crazy time it all was. Yeah, these types of things that I'm introducing you guys to today, it will certainly play a part in this next paper that we're going to have coming up at the end of the term on medical ethics. So the utilitarian way of thinking certainly influences how do we see a lot of the hot issues that we face today. So whenever we think of something like euthanasia, or we think of something like abortion or IVF, some of these things that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks, utilitarian thought is probably one major school. The consequentialists and utilitarian, you can kind of use those terms interchangeably. They're the same thing. But like that question I asked you earlier, would you say the 82-year-old or the 25-year-old? These are all things that we're going to be thinking about even more in the coming weeks. So this is the part of the course where it all starts to gel. You can kind of sit. Next week, you'll really see the method of my madness because you have all these theories to fall back on. So Wednesday, we are having our guest lecturer come in to give a presentation on Islam. Okay, she has a really good presentation. I don't know if you guys have met her. She's from Tunisia. She's here on a one at Bluefield State as a Fulbright scholar for 1 year. They change out every year. We have somebody coming in from overseas coming here to teach Arabic and Islamic culture and stuff like that every year. So rather than have me try to teach you the basics of Islam, I figure it's better to have somebody who actually knows what they're talking about give you the lecture instead of me. Okay. So we'll take a brief detour Wednesday and do that. Then next week we'll start getting really heavy into the medical stuff. Okay. So yeah, come on Wednesday and be ready for a good talk. It's a very enlightening talk. I mean, it's an important thing to talk about, especially with our current climate. Anti-Islamic rhetoric is starting to go around again. So education on what that faith does believe is a very important thing, I think. Okay. So you guys are all free. And I'm going to try to get your stuff back to you in the coming days as well. I just got through a stack of World Lit papers. You guys are definitely next. Okay. And everybody's free except Mandy. I want to talk to Mandy real quick after class. Okay. So take it easy, guys. See you Wednesday.
Principal's office.
Yep. I'm going to start.